You welcome the announcement of the 2% minimum wage increase, but I think that equivalent, I ain't too sure, but based on conversations I see online, it equivalent to cents. Satisfactory?
You would have just mentioned it, CTUSAB has, seen this as a failure to the people of Barbados. For those who hears it and hear the word increase, they believe that, something is actually happening. But you would have also noted that I would have mentioned living wage, which is two different things. And in reality, $340 a week in Barbados does not make sense. It does not make sense when we study, as I said before, the high cost of living in Barbados, healthcare in Barbados, the cost of transportation in Barbados, the cost of even schooling your children in Barbados. And when we sat down, we discussed this, and we did our calculations. It was like, this is just butter and bread. It does not make sense. And we are asking government to really sit down and look at what families, have conversations with families, and understand what families are enjoying every day. We look at the crime situation in Barbados, and no one has the fix for that problem. But all of these things complement the issue that we are facing. If there's nothing to eat, and we do not support crime. And we will not support crime. But when there is no food on the table, we have a problem. We have a problem. So addressing the issue that calculates the saints is something that I believe government has enough time now to relook it and come with something fresh on the table.
And then Mr. Peiza, for you, conversations with the business community, they often deny the price gouging, but from your end, how prevalent would you say it is?
I refer to two things: the price gouging, alleged, and also the fact that we have indiscriminate pricing. And there's a little difference between the two of them. Something has to be wrong. If you walk in the supermarket today and one item you see it costs $5, you go back tomorrow and it's $6.50. Something has to be wrong. If you go to a supermarket, the same item costs $6. You go down the road to the next door supermarket, it costs $7.50. You go down the road to the next one, it costs $10. Something is wrong. It means that our control systems are not working. They're not working. So whether it's price gouging or whether it's indiscriminate pricing, there's a need for regulation. And it's, to my mind, a sad day in our country. When a person today, we can have more healthy living, and you can. And I'm linking it to what your question. And you go into a store to buy 4 oranges, and 4 oranges costing you $10. They're no bigger than a fist. You go to buy 2 bananas, and the banana is $2 or $2.20 for a banana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How is this going to fit into the real mix? And the question which you posed to the president about the minimum wage. Now, we have to recognize in this society that all people have to live. And what may be minimum for you may not be minimum for me. But I will use it this way because we always believe that the middle class is living in luxury. But the middle class has some serious obligations. And apart from that, they have some serious statutory obligations. 40% of your salary being taxed. And you still have to live with your financial obligations and social obligations within the same society. So when you give a person $340 a week, and then the president outlined all the deductibles that they are, and in the main of our society, we have a single parent home. And if you don't have two people working in that home, crop or smoke your pipe. And even if you have, you still have a serious challenge. Why? The rents are exceedingly high. The mortgage payments are high. The car payments are high. So we are talking about how do we balance the scale. So we can't be giving people anything less than $400 at a minimum in today's Barbados. I said at a minimum. So those people who we elect in a parliament, intelligent people, responsible people, who could sit down and decide that they can give somebody a 17 cents increase and blow and bang a table on it. May God help them and their conscience, because they are unconscionable. And then they expect a productive society. They expect people to give 100% when there's nothing to incentivize workers. We are defeatists. We are leading ourselves to doom. We are failing the people. And I say this very strongly, because when a budget presentation could commence to tell the people of Barbados, we got a bounty. You know what a bounty? It made the cup is overflowing, and you give them 17 cents. What an insult to the people of Barbados.
No, Mr. This question is really quickly. I don't think it was mentioned, but you spoke with workers and stuff, and it was also mentioned during the budget that will be taxes and also the rental cars. Persons who rental cars, you know that some companies, some Barbadians, do that as a way to make money on the side. So just wanted to get your take as to how you CTUSAB use that additional tax on persons.
I love your question. You get my take, and I believe that not only my take, but we as representing people who anything that is a sense of a job, I believe needs to be protected. And I see this. You know, when we spoke about price gouging, this is the other side of the price gouging. This is to kill off the small man, so that those and the big players can survive. It takes us back. Just jog your memory a bit. When we had what we used to call them reconditioned vehicles.
Yes.
They weren't good to bring to the country because the big boy had to survive. But soon the market conditioned itself. The big boy said, you know, I'm in it too. Because they saw the profit-making line. So we are talking a lot about tourism, and that each man has to play his part. And that each Barbadian has to be enterprising in entrepreneurship. It should be an entrepreneur. And what we do is to speak, but when it comes to giving the opportunity, we shut the door. And this is a prime example of what Barbadians have to wake up to see what has happened to them. We all have to live. And if we have to do it through the means of investment, when the fellow rents a car, it's an investment. And you are telling me that you're going to give a disincentive to investment? It makes me wonder.
Listen up. National Trade Unit Center, working for the good of all. National Trade Unit Center, don't worry, you know we got control. We working with CTUSAB, working together for the good of all. We working with CTUSAB, we working together for the good of all.
Greetings, good morning, our friends in the media. Today, March Thursday, March 13th, our monthly press conference happening here at Barbados Union of Teachers. My name is Carseen Greenidge. I am the Public Relations Officer of CTUSAB, Congress of Trade Unions and Staff Associations. With me at the head table is our General Secretary, Comrade Dennis Peiza. Next to him is our President, Comrade Ryan Phillips. This continues our monthly and regular engagement with our public via you, our media team. And during this press conference, we expect to have a presentation led by our General Secretary, who will give a response on the budget which was recently laid in Parliament, followed by President Ryan Phillips. He will share some comments also, and towards the end we are going to speak to the matter of Protocol 7, which is in draft and expected to be signed sometime soon. CTUSAB has its comments on that, and we will share with you our comments. Before we get to that, as you know, CTUSAB looks forward to opportunities to engage with members of its public, the many workers in Barbados. In addition to our monthly press conference, coming up in March, we are hosting what we call a sensitization session. And what that simply is an opportunity for us to have dialogue on a particular topic that should be of interest to workers and members of the public. The date we have scheduled for that sensitization session is Wednesday the 26th of March. And that location for the sensitization will be the Common School Hall, and that begins at 6 p.m. And we're using this opportunity through you, our partners in the media, to invite members of the public to join us on that occasion, where we're going to have a panel discussion. And that panel discussion will feature prominent members of our community on the theme, the role of the Congress of Trade Unions and Staff Associations of Barbados, also known as CTUSAB, as the representative of labor in national development. The forum will take the form of a panel discussion. It will be moderated by Dr. Derek Aline, full trade unionist in Barbados, and a member of our CTUSAB Eminent Persons Group. We have comprising the panel on that occasion is, many persons would know, Dr. Christina Hines. She is head of Department of Government Sociology and Social Work and Psychology in the Faculty of Social Science, University of the West Indies, Cape Hill campus. Along with her, we will have Professor Don Marshall. He is the director of the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute of Social and Economic Studies, SALISIS, and Mr. Ellsworth Young. Mr. Ellsworth Young is Comrade Ellsworth Young is a trade unionist. He is the former Chief Labor Officer and Permanent Secretary, retired now, in the Ministry of Education. He is also a retired senior lecturer in the area of industrial relations at the University of the West Indies. We are also expected to have part of that panel a young workers' perspective, Miss Kathleen Braffett, also comprising that panel. And it will be an opportunity for them to give their individual perspective on that theme, moderated by Dr. Aline, and certainly towards the end, we expect to have comments and contributions from you, our friends in the media, and certainly members in the audience relative to that theme. So I just want to bring you up to date on and give you some expectations on March 26, 2023. 5, that's on Wednesday, beginning at 6 p.m. at the Cmrd School Auditorium.
The comments on the budget or response is in two parts. The president will do part 1 and I will do part 2, so he will make a connect between the first and the second presentation. Yeah, here's the slide.
Yes, I'll start with you, President Ryan, to give your comments and feedback at this time.
Yes, I just want to join the Public Relations Officer this morning to welcome all of you here this morning. I understand that this is a very busy day for some of you, and we really do appreciate the fact that you can find the time to hop out, to spend, before you go to spend the next 2 hours on other assignments. But nevertheless, we're here this morning, and the PRO would have clearly explained why we are here. And my part, as the General Secretary said, we've looked at the budgetary proposals for the last couple of days, and we've sought to took the responsibility of looking at it from a 2-pronged approach. All right, and CTUSAB was expecting that the primary focus of this recent budgetary proposal and financial statements was to ensure that there is a satisfied workforce which is not burdened with excessive taxation, and where appropriate measures are put in place to reduce the cost of inflation, the rising cost of living, and address the ease of doing business in Barbados. It was expected that the proposed measures would have been directed at ensuring increases in the take-home pay for workers in Barbados, thus increasing their spending power. The announcement of a 2% increase in the minimum wage every 2 years is welcome. We do welcome that. And it is expected that any upward adjustments to this increase as it relates to this minimum wage will enable the most vulnerable to have access to a decent living wage, and that's important. Quite often we hear about the minimum wage, but what happens also, we tend to forget that the living wage is very important, and as it stands, the minimum wage that amounts to $340 per week falls below par, given the fact that there's a high cost of living that is accentuated by the high cost of food, rent, and the payment of basic utilities such as electricity and water. And I dare not left out the fact that, when we consider transportation bus fare, when we calculate $7 times 5, at least 5-6 times a week, when you look at what is left, take home pay, and this is something that should be of concern. The fact also that many Barbadian households are made up of single parents, and one person working in a household taking home $340 a week, 2-3 children, does it really make sense? The changes made to the maternity leave policy, which provides the movement from 12 to 14 weeks and the removal of 3 confinements, makes good sense, as this is consistent with the intention to encourage population growth, and that has been a very popular conversation over the last couple of months in Barbados, and we do welcome this policy. Having been the vanguard of championing the call of paternity leave, CTUSAB is pleased that the government has responded in the affirmative to this particular call. The one-off payment of $300 is not to be overly criticized, but CTUSAB hopes that this will have no bearing, none whatsoever, on the upcoming public sector wage and salary negotiations. We believe that the government should also go on beyond raising the income tax threshold for pensioners to remove the taxes paid on pensions. The imposition of 20% sales tax on snacks that contain salt can potentially impact some businesses in Barbados. This will most likely be felt by manufacturers and small vendors, with the latter who are amongst the most vulnerable, who will feel the impact the most. CTUSAB questions if this is the answer to the management of the health problem. It begs the question as to how does this match up against the lowering of VAT on some items such as stew beef, minced pork, pigtails, Vienna sausages, and the like, which for preservation purposes carry a high content of salt. On the other side, CTUSAB was expecting the government would have removed the water and sewage tax, which as it stands is unfairly applied to most households, in that they are not attached to the sewage system. CTUSAB is also of the view that the government should have undertaken the review of the municipal solid waste tax for the purpose of arriving at whether it is not disincentive to persons who have an interest in undertaking improvements to their properties. Based on the 4% GDP growth, the buoyant growth the country has recorded, and projected growth of the economy based on the upturn in the tourism product. These are good grounds for serious consideration to be given to the level of taxation that is imposed on the citizens of this land. Given that the current foreign exchange reserves are reported to be in a healthy state, and that there are significant in the reduction in the national debt when compared to 2018, coupled with the fact that there is a high level of investment in the country. CTUSAB posits that there is room for consideration to that have been given to the reduction in the current 17.5% VAT payable on goods and services. In moving to reduce the cost to consumers, the removal of the imposition of 2% tax on overseas credit card transactions should also have been revisited. This is an added burden on consumers who make overseas purchases. If it is that the move is to undertake fewer cash transactions and to encourage online businesses, then any tax imposition on credit cards usage has no place and is more or less a punitive measure. The budgetary presentation financial statement, in our opinion, has failed in any extensive way to address the issues of poverty alleviation, the economic empowerment of a wide cross-section of Barbadians, reducing the cost of living and inflation, and either removing or reducing in any significant way the previously imposed taxes such as sewage tax and water rates. Government has shied away from announcing any new plans to addressing the rising cost of electricity bills, telephone services, the cost of food, identifying improvements in delivery of social public service, reducing the cost of land and housing to enable every Barbadian to become land and house owners. In this budget, Barbadians would have expected that the government would have announced measures to control the high charges of house rents, the alleged issues of price gouging, being experienced by consumers and the exploitation of the public of Barbados by the banking sector.
Follow on as the partner of the open embarrassment, and to give the perspective that addresses CTUSAB's expectations of the budget. We dealt with what we saw as the shortcomings, but we're going to look at the specifics. And this is premised on the fact that CTUSAB made submissions, an extensive submission to government pre-budgetary proposals, and we saw a few things that were touched, but in the main, we have genuine concerns about what came out of the budgetary proposals and financial statement. And I'd like to suggest that CTUSAB in its pre-budgetary submission to the government made a case for consideration to be given to a package of tax relief measures. Acknowledge that the government has favorably responded to its call for an increase in the personal income tax threshold to reduce the tax burden on low and middle income earners. The Congress, however, would welcome if government undertook to providing tax incentives for workers in the essential and protective services, including healthcare and education. Introducing a tax credit for employees who undertake job-related continuous professional development, and the offering of tax deductions for work-related expenses, including transportation and child care. Moving to the cost of living and economic relief measures, the Congress acknowledges that the government identified with its submission for reduction in the cost of vegetables and fruits to support the campaign of healthy eating towards addressing the incidence of non-communicable diseases, and in particular diabetes. It is our view that in the effort to fully promote the healthy lifestyle campaign, the government should have gone all the way and removed all import duties and VAT on all fruits and vegetables. They should have even taken steps to control the price of local fruit and vegetables that are being paid to the consumers of Barbados. It's almost an insult to our people when we can think that a bottle of coconut water costs as much as $18 today. CTUSAB posits that the subsidies that target the vulnerable groups, such as the aged, would have helped to mitigate the impact of inflation. The Congress believes that in its budgetary presentation, government overlooked and did not address consumer protection regulations for the purpose of preventing price gouging and overpricing. As workers continue to feel the impact of the cost of living, the Congress will have welcomed to learn of the expanded public transportation subsidies to reduce commuting costs to workers. Looking at the strengthening of the social protection measures, we believe that amidst all the complaints from pensioners about the late payment of pensions, it would have been fitting if the government had announced measures to increase funds to the National Insurance Scheme so as to ensure sustainability and timely payments of benefits. Congress is very disappointed that it's called for an enhanced pension reform to protect workers' post-retirement income security, such as the imposition of taxes on pensions went unaddressed. Looking at support for the small and medium enterprises, CTUSAB is of the view that instead of government providing tax concessions for hotels and restaurants who would provide means for workers, it should have instead focused on providing tax incentives for businesses that implement fair labor practices and engage in worker education and training programs. On the issue of health and safety in the workplace, consistent with the government's Mission 4 of public health and safety, CTUSAB notes the importance government attaches to the compliance with the Safety and Health at Work Act. The Congress, having developed a training program for members of the Occupational Safety Health Committees at workplaces, was hoping that government would have announced its funding support for this initiative which has been there, now going into the 4th year without any support to get it off the ground and have persons in the workplace trained as part of the regulation and requirements under the Shaw Act for the safety of committees to be in place. When we look at workforce development and skill training, based on the government's Mission 5, which addressed worker empowerment, CTUSAB was inclined to think that the government would have demonstrated that it was amenable to increasing budgetary allocations for technical and vocational training programs, providing incentives for businesses to offer apprenticeships and on-the-job training, providing tax incentives for workers in essential and protective services, including healthcare and education. The introduction of a tax credit for employees who undertake job-related continuous professional development, and the offering of tax deduction for work-related expenses, including transportation and healthcare. Beyond that, the strengthening of the social protective measures under Mission 5 would have been achieved through the expanding of access to affordable healthcare services for all workers, and providing incentives for business to offer apprenticeships and on-job training. As it pertains specifically to the protective services and nurses, CTUSAB was expected that government would have responded to its submission that addressed providing housing assistance programs for members of the protective services and nurses, including subsidized mortgages and rental support through the National Housing Corporation. Also improving access to mental health and wellness programs tailored to the needs of frontline workers. The introduction of hazard and risk allowance for high risk duties within these essential services. We also will review that the implementation of flexible retirement plans and establishing a mandatory retirement age for members of the protective services and nurses would have been on the cards. Implementing enhanced pension benefits for long-serving members of the protective service and the healthcare professionals was also anticipated. We believe that a look should be given to the introduction of interest-free car loans, or that a system that effect to assist with the reliable transport for members of the protective services and nurses. Providing free annual health checks for members of the protective services and nurses and persons of general healthcare professionals would have been a good thing to have, because it would show that we are really interested in their well-being. Now we're talking about all of the non-communicable diseases that are impacting, and we know a productive workforce is linked to a healthy workforce. The restoration of a full-term one-term leave for teachers who would have served after 15 years, that is something that needs to be addressed. It's up in the air. It's a to and fro battle. It was the entitlement that was in the original arrangement for teachers in the contractual engagement, and we believe that government should put this to bed and make sure that the Ministry of Education honors the commitment that has been in place for eons, as one would say. We all believe that there are some things that we want to challenge the government on in this budget, because these promises should be kept. And it's unfortunate that in the last budget in 2024, government promised a few things. It promised to grant long leave to nurses. That has not happened. It promised that it would provide nurses with the allowances for uniform and QE. That has not happened. The two-tier system of registered nurses, that has not happened. We have heard for time and time again the establishment of the Teaching Service Commission. That has not happened. Promises, promises, promises. We believe that the time for action is now, and not to promise and just keep people in the beds. But most of all, in this budget, if it is one thing that this Congress feels that the government failed to address in any meaningful way, is to come up and make it very clear to the Republic of Barbados that it would ban the importation of toy guns in Barbados. And when we say ban, we mean ban, because we know that the law prohibits the non-importation of toy guns that emit a sound And we know that all over the place, we see people with these long rifles shooting us. And if you hear them, you suddenly believe it's real. But they're here. And the government is policing will not stop the problem. Because if these things are coming into the country and we do not, cannot access or do not apprehend those who are in, we will have to know who's importing them. And just going around with 2 off the streets to show a sense that we are doing something. The point is to hit it at the source. Stop them so they will not be on the island. Stop them so that persons cannot convert them into real machines that can be used against the people of Barbados. I think that is a failing of this budget, but particularly because it is, as far as we are concerned, it does not make a big difference to the bottom line in terms of government's revenue. It's a nuisance and it is a threat to society that looms large, that needs to be addressed immediately. So that brings it into our presentation on the budgetary issues, and we pause for calls before we go into the second part of it. If you want to ask any questions on this first part, I think Mr. Moderator, you may.
Yeah, sure. Any questions relative to Comrade the Peiza General Secretary and President Ren Sher, which you may want to ask at this time, Tanisha, Sheree, Carlos?
I'm just curious about the President's budget. Any thought on this 10 or
13? What we want to Mr. Torrance speak with 13 numbers. As far as I understand the structure of Parliament, there are 30 persons in Parliament, are you correct? 30 of them will get up and speak. Mr. Torrance, I'm not on anything about the political, if I have not do that, you ask the question about speaking. If 29 people are going to speak, and each of them going to speak, and I will assume for an hour, minimum, you're talking about 29 hours. And Mr. Moore has no opposition. He has to speak as though he has won. So if he takes as much time as he wants to make his point, what's wrong with that? Once he speaks to the matters and the things that Barbadians want to hear, on both sides, I expect both sides to be honorable and to present their case, and once he can speak and present a case that people can listen to, because it's all happens. If the government has a case to present, we want to hear their case too, because at the end of the day you have to be reasonable and make a good judgment. But you only make a judgment based on what's presented to you. So the substance of what has been presented from both sides, to my mind, is what's important, and not for how long someone speaks. Because some speak and speak nothing, just get and talk, just George. Because just you have to pretend that the cameras are there, so somebody hear them, and they get and speak. And speak, say nothing relevant, but to talk about the last decade, be personal, that is not debating. That is being a useless, as far as I'm concerned, using the privilege of Parliament to speak.
what Son said, his substance? Are you pleased with his response?
We are not here to judge Mr. Torrance. We are here to represent the interests of Barbadian workers. What this Congress, on behalf of its non-affiliates, would want to see the interests of Barbadian working class people and the Barbadian public at large. We are not politicians. We are not getting into the details of Mr. Torrance's rights and wrong, or the government's rights and wrong. They have to deal with those issues, and the public will be better judged when they are ready to do so whenever election time is on. That's not our role.
There's some things you bring up, like you gotta work some things you're doing today. I'm not really, they didn't focus on some things that you're happy to see that you focus on, like some issues that should have been done in the budget.
You want me to answer? To answer your question, sir, issues of the day are the issues of the day. And therefore, any government wants to speak to the issue that they want to address, they will do so. The opposition is there for a purpose, to scrutinize and to speak to the issues in there. So if Mr. Torrance speaks to issues that align with what the movement is speaking, we have no conversation with him, because I want to make it clear the union. So these are the CTUSAB's positions, member organizations. But if the two things have to have some connection in terms of the commonality, then so be it. Because you can only speak to what exists, not what does not exist.
Listen up. National Trade Union Center, working for the good of all. National Trade Union Center, don't worry, you know we got control. We working with CTUSAB, working